Hello and welcome to the third episode in this series where I'll be looking at superhero films, and this time we'll be looking at Kick-Ass. Now, Kick-Ass is another one of those films that kind of takes the superhero genre and tries something slightly new with it. In this sense, it tries to make the experience of being a superhero as realistic as possible. I suppose that's a primary aim. So in essence, you have this teenager, kind of scrawny guy who has no superpowers. He has no kind of special superhero backstory or anything like that. He just is a guy who likes superheroes and he wants to be a superhero. Um, uh, and it's as simple as that. And he kind of I like this film in a lot of ways because it uses superheroes, but it's not necessarily really about superheroes, to be honest. I know that sounds really stupid, especially if you've watched the film. You're probably thinking, "Yeah, I'm an idiot." But hear me out. So essentially, you've got a story where the main character recklessly decides to put his life in danger. Why he does this is because he doesn't really have a lot to live for. It's not in like a really depressing way. He just wants some more excitement in his life in general because he hasn't got a girlfriend. He hasn't got he's got friends, but they're not like they're kind of dicks to him, and they're kind of not the best friends in the world. But he hasn't got his mum either, which is kind of underplayed a bit. But it's all culminates to this, and I'm trying not to go too speculative here, but essentially this is and it becomes more about essentially when he starts getting more of these things, like he gets a girlfriend, he has something to care about, and it makes that process of being a superhero more difficult, even though he does still enjoy it. So essentially, what I think this film really is about kind of what you value and kind of what's worth, making a difference, being good. What is that worth to you? So uh, I'll say, I suppose, right now that I do like this film quite a lot. I recommend it. Um, it's similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, where it comes really close to being really just like it comes really close from being great to being amazing. I think this is definitely a great film, and it's even if you ignore my slightly speculative idea of what the film is about, and you just kind of enjoy the nonsense superheroes, because there's a lot of despite what I just said, there's a lot of well choreographed fight scenes, a lot of great action in there. I think a highlight for me and for a lot of people it seemed was the it's a prolonged section where we look through. It's like Silence of the Lambs almost. I think it's meant to be a homage to it slightly, but I'm not really sure. Where the girl has night vision goggles, and and the camera it's a point of view shot, a prolonged one, where she just like takes out a load of guys, and it's really well done. I really like that. It made it feel very very visceral and very like up close and personal. So I like those touches, but so yeah, there's plenty to enjoy even if you don't look beyond directly what's in front of you. So, um, but aside from that, I think the film slightly loses focus a lot. I think this had a lot of potential. I haven't read uh, the graphic novel that this is based on, but I think this really did have a lot of potential. And while I really enjoyed myself watching it, it just felt like it could have been a lot more. Maybe if they had run with uh, the ideas, it feels like one of those films that had a really strong start, Like the start is really cool. It's really focused in on the main character Dave and how he's like struggling to how he kind of struggles in life, and then when he becomes a superhero, all this cool stuff happens to him, and he starts to appreciate it. But then he starts to realize how dangerous it can be, and all that. But it kind of gets a bit muddled towards the end because he starts so we go through a character arc. This is kind of a spoiler, I suppose, but we kind of go through this character arc where he longs for something more exciting in his life. He gets it, and he realizes that it's not all it's cracked up to be because it's really dangerous, and he nearly dies quite a few times, and he's not a real superhero. He hasn't got powers and all that. So it would kind of make sense for that to have a bittersweet conclusion, I suppose. Either he maybe bites the bullet almost, or if you want to go a bit less dark, like he faces some kind of injury or someone he loves, he loses someone he loves or something like that, and he kind of has to question, well, maybe I had a boring life, but at least it was a life. But this is all subjective, of course, but essentially it needed a focus, because what happens is he goes through that character arc and he realizes how dangerous it is, and then he proceeds to like take out a mob boss for this girl who, it makes sense that they've grown and she's doing her a favor, even though she doesn't really seem to want him there. She says she can do it on her own. He's worried about her. I get that, but it just feels a bit like, and it feels insulting to say this because the rest of the film defies this word, but the ending sequence feels a bit cliche. It's very like, he rises up and he takes up the mask and he kills. He does like all this badass shit, which doesn't make any sense because the whole film he's been this lackluster, half-hearted super, like, quote unquote superhero, and it seems really silly to make him then at the end like this really badass kind of superhero. I understand character growth is important, but this was the wrong kind of character growth. I think he should have maybe given it up, and then maybe have the girl get closure at the end. Maybe have her kill him, or maybe she decides, maybe she gets to the very end, and Kick-Ass comes in at the last second, and he's like, you don't need to do this. You're better than that. And she's like, she has to reluctantly decide so, and then they both go on with their lives. But it just kind of ends with them being cool superheroes, which I don't think. I don't know. As I said, I haven't read the book, but I don't think this isn't the impression I got from the first half of the film, where they were kind of like, well, I mean, she wasn't, but he was like a lackey, and he was meant to be like a realistic person. Have him at the end just be this badass doesn't really make a lot of sense to continue on from that opening. But aside from that, because that's quite a subjective criticism, really. Aside from that, there's a lot of really good elements to this film. The acting is top notch all around, really. Even the young actress who plays Hit Girl, like, I can't remember her name. They're all really good. The main character, I think, plays really good. Plays a really good awkward teenager, who kind of grows a bit more as he goes along. Chloe Grace Moretz, that was the actress who plays Hit Girl. No wonder I didn't remember her name. Yeah, she does a surprisingly good job. I'm not sure if she was actually, however young the character's supposed to be when they were filming it, but as she was clearly a young actress, and any young actor that is any good at all, I will give praise to. And Nicolas Cage is surprisingly good in this movie. But I think I saw this film quite a while ago. I didn't really know who Nicolas Cage was, and then after seeing some of his other stuff, I'm really surprised at how good he is. He basically plays like Batman, like literally Batman. But he's really good. He's really compelling. He's good at playing that kind of quiet, slightly sociopathic, but very driven character. Um, you know, with Nicolas Cage, it's 50-50 really, whether you're going to get a good performance or a not so good one. But yeah, as I said, on a more objective level, this film is great. Really, the characters are immediately likable or relatable, and the bad guys are very some of them are quite stereotypical, which is fine. But I'm glad that it balances out a bit with a few more kind of more interesting characters like Red Mist. Um, he's a bit more he's a bit more interesting in that he's just trying to kind of please his dad almost, or he's trying to be cool. He's not really trying to be like an evil guy. He's not trying to kill Kick-Ass or anything like that. He's just trying to be cool or whatever, or be accepted by his dad. So it's always nice to have, especially in a superhero film, to have villains that aren't necessarily cartoonishly evil. Um, but yeah, as I said, apart from my own personal idea of how this film could have been improved, this film is really solid. It's got great action scenes. Um, but yeah, that's the only criticism is it's got great action scenes, but sometimes you almost feel out of place, like it goes against having great action, great choreographed action is great, but it's not the be all end all. It especially if it goes against the kind of overarching theme of the film. But anyway, you might even disagree with me on that. Um, you might even consider that that's not the main theme of the film, and that it's just the kind of superhero, the idea of being a superhero and all that. Um, but anyway, yes, I would recommend Kick-Ass to, especially if you like superheroes. But if you like good action, if you like good, I guess that's it really. I don't know who else this would appeal to really. Um, but yeah, next week, haven't quite decided yet. We'll probably be looking at a certain Christopher Nolan film um, at some point, probably next week, to be honest. And pretty soon we might be rounding this series off, and I'll be rounding it off with what I hope to be a bang. Um, if you're a long time die-hard movie night fan, which I'm sure most of you are. If you're a long hard fan, um, you might remember me mentioning on a few occasions that me and Albert should review a certain film, and believe me, I am aiming to get a good review in there. Might be a bit longer than what has been in the past, because I've got a lot to say about that film. So, enough teasing. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.